I watched a little bit of Morning Joe this morning because I was just curious. I know. It's first time in ever. It wasn't Joe and Mika. It was it was Willie Nelson.
Oh, that's that guy's name?
No. And the story that is coming out of Davos, the main story is the critique of Davos. As an economics correspondent for the Washington Post, listen to where this goes.
There are growing calls to address these inequalities, particularly the wage inequality, with more taxes. In particular, in the United States, there's been a call by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez to tax people earning over $10 million at a 70% tax rate. The current top rate in the United States is 37%. Michael Dell, do you support this?
Well, look, I mean, you know, my wife and I set up a foundation about 20 years ago, and I feel much more comfortable with our ability as a private foundation to allocate those funds than I do giving them to the government.
All right.
So no, I'm not supportive of that. And I don't think it would help the growth of the U.S. economy.
Oh, that's interesting. And can you say a little bit more about why? Why you don't think it would?
Well, name a country where that's worked, ever.
United States.
Briefly, in the 80s.
No.
All right, pause it for a second. No, pause it for a second. This is an economics correspondent for arguably the second most important newspaper in the country, but a fairly important paper that internationally as well. It's maybe not the economics correspondent. And she says for a short time in the 80s. These reporters don't have Google?
Yeah.
They don't they don't like, hey, I'm going and I am the economics correspondent for the Washington Post. And I'm going to ask Michael Dell about these tax rates. Yeah. I wonder what the tax rates have been in this country that I am an economics correspondent for in the second most important.
You could have used a Dell computer.
I guess you need to be a professor at MIT to know this, but go.
And can you say a little bit more about why? Why you don't think it would?
Well, name a country where that's worked, ever.
United States.
Briefly, in the 80s.
No. From about the 1930s through about the 1960s, the tax rate averaged about 70%. At times it was up as high as 95%. And those were actually pretty good years for growth. So I don't have a strong opinion on that proposal. A lot of the devil is in the details. But I think it's, there's actually a lot of economics that suggests that it's not necessarily going to hurt growth.
Yeah. I'm just flabbergasted by the reporter more than anything else.
It's mind-boggling. I think that when you see reporting around economics, the CNBCs of the world, and I'd include her in that, and it's about this kind of disturbing worship of corporate culture and of wealth building, and economic forums like Davos, are part of that weird worship. It's a capitalism shrine, basically, and they're just kind of stenographers about what's going on currently, as opposed to giving context as to how things were all in the past.
I think that MIT guy is probably more emboldened to bring that up, or we just...
Well, I think that's the other dynamic. Davos, I think, is always invited. They like to have okay, come give us a little critique to prove that we're willing to be criticized. But if you're in a room with like a couple hundred, literally the global elites, and then you just know it's going to be streamed on C-SPAN and nobody's going to watch it because it's really boring after you get over the novelty of watching Bono lecture some leader from Zimbabwe on debt relief or other nonsense that happens at Davos. And that's the whole point of this conference is Michael Dell looks like an idiot. They are whining about tax rates and then doing bizarre exercises where they pretend to be migrants as experiential learning. And it's for the rest of us to look at them and go, oh, you people should be in the dustbin of history. You've ruined the world and you're delusional.
I'd say we're about 3 years away from Davos being a lot less puppy. No social media.
Definitely.
We need to be able to really exchange
ideas. We need to be able to
think. And we don't want people to interrupt with this. Yeah. Here is another example.
My first time at Davos, and I find it quite a bewildering experience, to be honest. I mean, 1,500 private jets have flown in here to hear Sir David Attenborough speak about, how we're wrecking the planet. And I hear people talk in the language of participation and justice and equality and transparency. But then, I mean, almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance, right? And of the rich just not paying their fair share. I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's allowed to speak about water. I mean, 10 years ago, the World Economic Forum asked the question, what must industry do to prevent a broad social backlash? The answer is very simple. Just stop talking about philanthropy and start talking about taxes. During Republican President Eisenhower, the war veteran, the top marginal tax rate in the US was 91% for people like Michael Dell. The top estate tax for people like Michael Dell was more than 70%. I mean, this is not rocket science. I mean, we can talk for a very long time about all these stupid philanthropy schemes. We can invite Bono once more, but come on, we got to be talking about taxes. Yeah, exactly. That's it, taxes, taxes, taxes. All the rest is bullshit, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yes, enjoy your last time at Davos.